It is late. The rain has been falling since midnight, steady and constant, as if the world settled into one long-held breath. My apartment walls shake faintly with that hum storms always leave behind, the kind you only notice when everything else goes quiet. I moved the little folding table close to the window and set up the new microphone. I wanted to hear how it handled dense water noise, wanted its detail. Something clean. Something I could work with. The clock read 2:13 exactly when I pressed record. The red light blinked, chasing shadows across wet glass. I leaned close, listening through one earphone. At first it was normal. The long wash of rainfall, thick and soft, the kind you can fall asleep to if you let it. Then a wire slipped inside it. A hiss. Thin, sharp, like static but coiled. I adjusted the dial back and forth. It stayed, not weather, not hiss, a pattern rising just under the constant splash. I froze there, motionless, because once I noticed it, I couldn't unhear it. The sound repeated. Small intervals, clean gaps, like something coded wrapping itself in water. The hair on my arm lifted clean off my skin. The microphone was good. Too good. I reached for the logbook I keep, thumb trembling, and I wrote the minute down. 2:13. Underline, rain load heavy. Strange pattern hiss. Possible interference. But interference doesn't repeat with that discipline. Then a shape. I swear a shape moved in the recording. Static has no shape. It spreads chaotic and violent. This flowed upright. Inside the wave span there was a rise and dip, like drawing hills, but the angles looked deliberate. Not peaks but edges. Angles as though someone had cut the waveform with knife strokes. The storm stuttered. A hard drop against glass broke it into scattered noise. And from underneath I heard it, a voice, not full, bare, one syllable torn mid-flight. Gone as soon as I recognized what it was. My stomach locked into a knot. I sat back hard, eyes on the meter jumping in slow rhythm. I pulled my face away from the mic as if it was breathing back. Thought maybe someone outside, on the street low below, maybe yelling across the alley. But the air outside carried only sheets of rain and the slow groan of water slipping into drains. No human sound out there. Nothing above a hush. I hit stop on the deck. My finger stuck to the plastic button with sweat. The tape rolled back, numbers counting in bright green. I knew I shouldn't replay here, not when I was rattled. But I wanted to know if I had gone mad. Instead of rewinding all the way, I pressed save. Wrap the reel and secure a copy. My hand was shaking so much I fumbled the pen across its spine, scrawling the date wrong, smearing ink. My chest hurt as if the room had leaned closer to me in that moment. Pressure deep in my throat. Signals become doors. The phrase struck me right then, like an echo from far back. I can't tell if I had read it before or thought it fresh. A door opening inside a tape. Ridiculous idea. But when something impossible happens before your eyes, your head runs for any frame to wedge it inside. I whispered the date aloud into the microphone. I wanted proof of my own presence stamped in the audio, something that could not be faked or altered without me hearing. I spoke the words again slower, to hear my voice ripple under the storm. My throat dried even with the rain battering hard against the pane. The words slipped smaller than I intended. The storm surged louder, as if to hide them. Another downpour struck, and my low phrase sank inside the violent rush. Buried and gone. The whole sound collapsed into sudden quiet. Hard cut. The rain on the outside still fell. I could hear it in real space, but inside the headphones there was nothing. Dead air. A naked strip of silence so sharp it rang. For 1 second, I thought I had gone deaf. Then the deck clicked on its own, spinning, spooling tape, though no signal played. A haunted machine caught an empty mechanical chore. My jaw trembled as I leaned back, listening. The hum of the building came forward, pipes grating, fridge kicking weak air. The storm outside sounded normal again. But that strip of silence I just heard, it lingered in my chest like it had left a stain. I stared at the recorder, waiting for it to wake. Nothing more came. Just a dull red light blinking on-off. I closed the curtains with quick, fussing hands and tried to breathe. It took 3 tries before my lungs agreed. I wrote down again in the log, sudden mute. No possible weather cause. Felt intentional. I underlined it until the paper nearly tore. It was late. Too late for rational check. I wanted badly to hit play again, but fear locked me. The sense that once I played it, it would never fit back onto plastic, that it would move freely in the room. Instead, I boxed the tape, slid it deep into the bottom drawer where I keep old notes, and I latched it. Maybe I dreamed the syllable. Maybe I imagined the shapes in spectrum. But no dream slices sound clean like that. The apartment stayed heavy, every lamp buzzing faint low frequency. I turned them off, left the window dark. The rain kept pressing its face to the pane. I told myself I would check tomorrow, in daylight, with fresh hands and clear mind. I told myself time and date stamps don't lie. Tape doesn't dream, but I couldn't shake the image. My own sound whispering inside silence. A voice escaping through rainfall like it had chosen me to hear it. I don't know why. But I know one thing. Tomorrow I will check the tape. The room is dark except for the glow of the recorder deck. I set the tape inside, press play, and lean close. At first, it's only rainfall. Softer than I remember. Not the brutal wash from last night. This is thin, distant, like it's been drained through cloth. My gut twists. Recording should capture what was there, but this one feels altered. I close my eyes and listen harder. The hiss climbs. At first random, then steady. A rhythm cuts under the rainfall. A pulse, even spacing. Not wind, not thunder. Something deliberate. A beacon hiding where storm sound should live. I shift the dials, filter the ranges. My ears ache with each adjustment. Then the hiss glows sharp in the monitor. The rain slides to the back, dragged down, until only the pulse speaks. Short, sharp, unnatural gaps. The screen flashes faint color blooms around the frequency peak. Shapes flicker, not curves but hard angles. Like gates opening and slamming shut. One voice cuts through. Small, thin, only once. It speaks a single word, open. Just that. I blink fast, freeze in place. My throat locks. The word is there and not there, stretched thin but undeniable. I stop the tape, then rewind fast back to 2:13. I scan again. The same build, the same hiss rising out. And the same voice, faint, hushed, carrying that impossible word. Open. My hands shake. It's not imagination. It lives on tape. I print the spectrum to paper, black lines bleeding onto white. The gate shape repeats across the page. Thick edges, impossible symmetry. It looks like an instruction. A door cut into noise. I take my mic off, stare at the city through my rain-blurred window. Empty streets below. But the storm isn't thick enough now to mask sound, and still, I heard it louder than the rain outside. I upload the file to a server under an old handle. I bury it inside a folder of sleep tracks labeled Night Rain. A cover. I set it free but hidden. If it spreads, I'll know by the echoes. Within hours, the file bounces back. Not small movement. Dozens, then hundreds of downloads. Some reply straight away. They tell me they hear more in it. They say the voice repeats in background layers I didn't chart. They write descriptions I never said aloud. Dry corridors. Heavy doors slamming shut. A sound like dripping echoing down halls. A dream image built out of noise. One reply chills me. A listener insists they heard wood crack open as the word played. Not distortion, not static, an actual door swinging into their room. They swore they saw light through it. Another says nothing at all came through their speakers, but silence. Yet their cat clawed the wall when the rain file hit 30 seconds in. They send shaky audio of claws dragging long down drywall. The sound like writing. My inbox grows restless. People want answers I cannot give. Some say it soothed them. Others say it froze them awake until dawn. Some beg for the source. I close the page. Through all of it the word stays looped in my head. That one command, open. The deck light flickers so faint, I don't know if it's real. A noise cuts sharp in the apartment. I freeze. A sudden rap twice, against my front door. Knuckles, solid, measured. Rain outside does not cover it. Too close. I hold my mouth closed, heart pounding. The sound waits, pressing. And then nothing. Silence returns, heavy as stone. But I know I'm not alone. Reports come fast, quicker than I expect. By morning my inbox has more than 30 new messages tied to the rain file. I scroll through them, eyes burning from no sleep. Most are strangers. A few use blank emails, no names attached, just raw text. Their words split me in half. They write about dreams. The same dream. Every single one describes long corridors, dripping wet, pale lights overhead. Some say tile floors. Others insist the floor is concrete, uneven, shin-deep in cold water. They all describe the smell, metallic, like rust and stone mixed with rain soaked through for years. Details line up across people on opposite corners of the world. They could not have coordinated. My stomach turns. One person tells me they woke to find their bedsheets damp after hearing the file. Another swears they heard low sobbing behind each door in the dream hallway. Small touches, but identical. More than chance. I grab my log and write every timestamp they list. I run playback again, slower this time. At 12 minutes and 18 seconds, the hiss thickens, pressing harder into the track, building a wall. Behind it, faint echoes scrape through. Words buried there, not just one. I catch fragments, half consonants, half vowels. Impossible to align, until suddenly the same syllable emerges. The same single word as before. Open. The fact it repeats shreds the idea of coincidence. Repetition means intent. I print new spectra, tape the sheets along my wall. Overlays of the rain hiss build patterns. Curves align. Black edges cut straight across like diagrams, thickening into outlines. They look like door frames drawn by invisible engineers. Signals become doors. The phrase makes more sense every hour. In the middle of this flooding confusion, a new message arrives. Not like the others. This one encrypted. Text is sharp, clipped. They call themselves an insider. No name, no affiliation. Only a warning. Government systems flagged my file the moment it spread beyond 10 shares. Too clean to be random. They say the spectrum frequencies bloom in ranges reserved for emergency bands. The file shouldn't live there, yet it does. Their note ends sharp. Stop now or someone will shut you down. I read it 3 times. My body buzzes hot, then cold. They know. Whoever handles transmissions, they are watching. Silence in official channels, but quiet surveillance grows loud in my gut. Outside, the sky shows no storm. Forecasts had cleared, but I hear a growing wash against the roof. Rain again, heavy, too heavy for clear skies. The glass shines with running water. I check radar maps. Nothing shows, no cloud cover, no fronts, empty blue. It is not on the record. Yet the rain pounds. I set a second recorder on my table. Fresh tape, fresh label. As soon as it clicks into place, it hums. A low vibration climbs out, not even waiting for rain to hit. I lean close. My breath fogs plastic. And beneath the hum, I hear it. Slow breathing, drawn between heartbeats. Not mine, wrong tempo. Wrong tone. It swells when I speak aloud, then pulls back shy when I fall still. Like someone testing the gap in conversation. I press my palm to the recorder. It feels warm, hotter than it should. I want to yank the plug, but I can't. The need to prove outweighs the fear. I sit there, fingers shaking, listening to a storm that should not exist, that no map admits. My pen scratches down notes as careful as scripture. 2:13 last night felt like chance. Now it feels like a design. Interference is not the right word anymore. This isn't noise. It's intrusion. I glance at the wall of spectra, rows of black gates lined like tiny hallways. They glance back at me, ugly and undeniable. Memory, grief, sound all blurred. The pattern builds without my consent. Sleep refuses me. My eyes ache raw, lids hanging. I cannot close them, not now. The breathing continues soft on the tape, filling the room with presence. I pack a second recorder in my bag, strap on heavy boots. I write one line in the log. I can't sleep. Then I shut the book clean. I took the train south. The ride was empty, silent except for the rattle of metal joints. I carried only my recorder bag and a notebook. Destination: the old station by the river. It closed 20 years ago after a storm surge drowned the lower levels. They never reopened it. Flood damage sealed in mildew and mud. The city paper said the cost to clear it wasn't worth the ridership. That was the official story. When I reached the gate, the chain link sagged as if others had forced their way in before me. I crawled through, knees scraping gravel, heart catching every creak. Inside smelled of rust and wet brick. The stairwell down still shimmered with algae. Watermarks climbed midway up the wall, a line drawn by the storm that ended its use. I set up my microphone, plugged the headphones in, and pressed record. Instant hiss. A roar layered beneath rain, though no rain should echo in a space choked with mildew. My breath sped short. The hiss swelled into rhythm, thunder without a storm, like pressure trapped in the walls fighting for way out. Then the layer shifted. Words bled into the signal. Not clear ones. Faint voices. Men, women, both. Whispers stitched on top of each other. At first I thought it was strangers. A chorus spewed into dissonance. But then my heart broke, because one of the voices tangled in the noise was hers. My sister. Gone 10 years, gone and buried. Voice carried back in glitching fragments. She said words I knew, short phrases cut from memory. Not public. Not recorded anywhere. Only ours. I staggered against a wall as if the station itself had struck me. I wanted to rip the headset off, to flee, but I stayed. Because once you hear the dead whispering through static, you can't walk away. You have to know how. You have to know why dot signals become doors. I thought it again. This wasn't a metaphor anymore. She spoke as if through a door only I could open. My logical side said tricks, random scraps aligning by chance. But memory doesn't lie when you know its texture. I sobbed quietly, breath catching into the mic. A sudden spike in frequency almost deafened me. The waveform jumped higher than my filters could guard. A different voice rose, stretched across bandwidths impossible for human lungs. It came metallic, stretched thin like rubber band steel. One phrase, low and hungry. Come closer. The tape locked. The reels stopped on their own. I pressed the button again and again. No give. The recorder refused, but the signal carried on, no device to feed it. The hum bled into the room itself. I clutched my chest and swore the walls pulsed. I packed fast but left the mic wired. I couldn't stop gathering. The air itself had become archive. The silence following was worse than the noise, like breath drawn from the space. When I stepped back into light, night rain had started above. Not heavy, just slow drops striking pavement. But every hit sang inside my ears, as if words waited under each one. I knew then the recordings weren't stuck on tape stock. They migrated. Whatever lived in sound wanted me out of silence, wanted me deep inside its corridors. The tape remained frozen when I checked. On the counter, the reels sat limp. Yet the red light stayed blinking, and still in my head, that warping phrase churned and repeated. Come closer. The basement smelled like mold and dust. I had to push a swollen wooden door inward with my shoulder until it gave. Old fluorescent bulbs buzzed along the ceiling, their light weak, uneven. What stretched in front of me looked less like storage and more like burial. Rusted racks of cardboard boxes sagged against each other. Labels had been blacked out with thick marker. Whole shelves marked therapy. I slid one open. Inside, stacks of cassette shells. Clear plastic, no writing, no dates. My fingers shook as I chose one and fed it into my deck. The wheels spun rough but steady. At first only a suffocating hiss filled my ears. Heavy and crowded, like breathing underwater. But then the noise shifted, pressed flat, and numbers appeared. Not spoken, not sung. Numbers embedded in the wave pattern itself. The meter lights pulsing in count. 8, 4, 1, 9. I wrote them quick, scratched on my pad. More followed. 2, 6, 0. Then silence. I checked the sequence with my laptop, scrambled through news archives. My blood ran cold. Each matched a date of disaster. A bridge collapse last spring. An unexplained commuter crash in the North Line. A hurricane's skeletal death toll. They were forecasts burned into old hiss. Prediction before event. I felt my breath leave heavy, chest sinking. The next tape word alive. Same hiss, same drowning weight. But this one ended with the date of yesterday. Not tied to anything. Nothing reported. The page I searched showed no headline. But the word crashed through me, yet I tossed the tape down. Static filled the air, even unspooled. A whole room sighing, secret after secret. Information hidden as intrusion. Tapes stacked like coffins. Who stored them here, in this basement? Under lock and fluorescent hum. The silence of institutions feels louder than thunder when every answer is taped. Quietly, waiting, I set another reel running. The hiss thickened until it became choking. Behind it, numbers twisted into names. Street names, exact addresses. When I heard the name of my own block, I ripped the headphones away. Slammed the stop. The tape hiss didn't die. It kept spilling thin through open air. I backed into shadows as footsteps clattered above me. Not shuffles. Boots, deliberate, quick. The lock on the upper door ground metal. My chest locked as I ducked behind rows of reels, heart hammering thin, ragged beats. Voices carried down. Not soft. Commands tight. Overlapping radios clipped to uniforms. Heavy doors slammed shut above. I crouched lower, knees pressed sharp against concrete. My ears throbbed, pulse echoing louder than boots, but I heard it all the same. The hiss stretched now, poured from cracks in the floorboards. For a second it wasn't hiss at all, but the sound of rain dripping through. I stared upward into the ceiling where pipes groaned. Through those gaps I heard heavy steps, crackle of static radios, and over all of it water falling in sheets. Clear sky outside, but down here it roared. The sound filled the basement until my own breath went thin, and then I knew they were searching for me. The tower rose black against a flat sky. No clouds, just pale stars blotted white above it. The relay hummed as if alive, steel bones thrumming through my shoes. My ally met me at the locked gate, hood pulled low. No names exchanged. They carried a battered hard case, filled with things not meant for me. Frequency scramblers, copper spools, cables thick as hoses. We moved fast. No cameras, no guards. Just cold silence. At the highest platform, wind pushed like a hand. The city below was swallowed in shadow. We bolted our equipment into the console hatch and patched the deck into the relay. When the switches flipped, a dry click and then hum split down my spine. The rain began the second we pressed play. A sheet of it where clouds had not been a moment before. My ally cursed. Fingers tightened on metal controls, shaking with rain drive. We had one task: flood the system with reverse pattern. See if the emitted signal could collapse the humming core. Meters flickered weak, then stronger, then red rage. The pulse on screen built high towers of neon bloom, spectrum screaming in jagged shapes I had never charted. These weren't curves of a storm. They were faces, tilted profiles drawn by interference. Data bending into human outline. The sky cracked electric. Lightning spread with no thunder, horizontal cuts across black. Our deck screamed feedback high and tortured. My bones shook. Pressure filled every hollow inside me. The hiss doubled, then tripled. The sound wasn't leaving, it was coming in. The attempt was failing. We weren't broadcasting at all. We were a receiver. My hands slammed switches to cut, but the board didn't answer. Meters snapped the needles hard against plastic, slamming, refusing to fall back. And through the noise, the word cut again. Open. But not one voice this time. A chamber of voices, hundreds, male, female, deep, high, layered until the syllable became ocean. Open. Open. My stomach inverted. My phone jolted alive in my pocket, screen bright, call incoming from my mother's number. She is dead. My throat locks. I do not answer. The phone glows, and I hear my own voice speaking through the speaker. The words I said into tape 2 nights ago. My date stamp, my confession. They spill from the speaker with clarity. My ally screams. Their line bolts with fire, white heat chewing through equipment. Smoke rolls. Sparks spit. I yank the battery free with bare hands. It sizzles and brands my palm. The relay shakes under wind that isn't real. The sky twists. And then silence. Smoke lingers. Equipment dead. The relay towers stand stark. A hollow ringing in my ears, but the rain. The rain doesn't stop. I hadn't slept in days, but when it finally happened, it struck heavy, like being shoved under. I woke inside the first dream. I knew instantly it wasn't mine. The corridor stretched ahead, water dripping constant from pipes that weren't there. Long walls stained with shadows no light created. Every few feet, doors marked the hallway. Their wood swollen, metal latches rusted. I touched one. The handle stung my fingers with cold. Locked, I moved to another. Same result. Door after door sealed tight. Behind them, sound lived. Not sharp, not clear, but loud enough to feel pressing into me. Muffled sobbing from one. Low laughter behind another. Then farther down only silence, a silence that vibrated, filling my body with pressure. Each step I took, that silence grew heavier until it hummed in my jaw. It wasn't silence anymore, it was an invasion. The floor rippled beneath my shoes. Rainwater spread thin across concrete, cold and reflective. My face stared back faint in the surface, shaking. I looked down and noticed what I carried. My tape player. It hung bright on a strap around my neck, its red light steady. It was playing. Through the rain hiss, it gave back my voice from the real world. Not narrative, not sentences. Private little moments I had recorded months ago and forgotten. My notes to self. My grief muttered late at night into reels. The machine played them here, in this place, as though memory itself had been stolen and fed back as architecture. I couldn't stop listening. It was me, but not anymore. Recording devours the living voice. It takes memory, presses it flat, and returns intrusion. In corridors like this, playback felt like prophecy. Between the doors, a new voice arrived. Not the echoes behind wood, not my tape reflections. Something near me. It came from no direction, only proximity. Clearer than all. It did not repeat open. Not here. It said one word. Choose. I froze. The corridor drew long as sight, every door waiting. Choose. Choose. My chest contracted, hands shaking, because I knew the word wasn't a suggestion. It was command. I staggered forward, breath hot in my mask of fear. I pushed against a half-broken door, shoulder cracking the swollen frame. It shook but did not open. My tape player pulsed harder, light heating through the metal. Whispers rose behind me like chase. Rain dripped louder, faster, a swarm of tiny knocks. I turned slow, heart pounding. There was no one there. Just the long corridor stretching endless. But water was higher now, climbing past my ankles, rising. Cold swallowed bone. Doors started rattling one by one, handles jigging sharp like fists trying to get in. Choose, the voice said again, slower and heavier, vibrating my ribs. My foot slid back, water pulling me deeper. I screamed, but no sound came. My breath puffed steam. The tape player flared. That's when I wrenched awake. My sheets were soaked through. Not sweat, not spilled water. Drops clung to my arms, my chest, my mouth. Real rain dripping down onto my bed from nowhere above. I blinked fast, heart hammering, shifting out from the wet mess. I thought I had dreamed too deep. But when I looked across the room, I saw it, the recorder light still glowing. The call came at dusk. My insider's voice rough in the speaker, fast like someone running low on time. They told me the dam was broken. The signal couldn't be put back. It had slipped into feeds, into networks, into everything we call background noise. Rain tracks online, simple ambient loops, every one of them now carried the pattern. Entire cities streaming it by choice. Sleep channels blasting the hiss into bedrooms through the night. The reach was beyond stopping. I stood at the edge of my window, headphones slung loose around my neck, phone hot in my hand. I asked if anything could be done. Their silence stretched. Then they whispered no. They said hospitals were filling faster than the news could cover. Patients locked in rain sleep, eyes wide open, bodies alive but minds wandering corridors. Some whispering words through lips cracked dry. Doctors sealing rooms, calling it mass psychosis. No one using the word transmission. I drove toward the flooded station again. Highway shoulders blurred in drizzle that shimmered without clouds. Water traced veins down glass. In the car speaker, the hum arrived uninvited. I cut the feed. Dead silence. The hum stayed, rising through the frame itself. It carried a shape inside, one that rippled like breath. By midnight, I reached the old station. The chains were gone. Gates ripped wide. Mud pressed fresh under my shoes. I walked down the stairs, clenching the recorder like a knife. A noise hit me straight from the low dark. Not rain, not hiss. This was something heavier. A wall of sound, thick, roaring, like a waterfall taped over until it became pure static. I forced myself closer. Inside the arch chamber stood it, a wall of gray bloom, spectrum pulsing in slow rhythmic waves. The flood of noise wasn't empty. Shapes bent inside it like shadows moving behind cloth. Wide outlines, tall. As I stepped closer, the recorder screamed, its red light burning as if my chest were on fire. My ears tore with pressure, the tape whirling frantic, meters blacking out from overload. And behind the storm I heard it once more. Not whisper, not faint. Clearer than my own thoughts. The words stretched out slow until it seemed to quake the air. Open. Its sound lengthened. Thousands of voices all at once, each dragged slow over seconds, braided into eternity. My skin rippled as if touched. My vision warped tall behind wet lashes. The floor slicked under me, corridors forming in sound itself. Doors rumbling, their locks bending inward. Bolts sliding as walls shook. I raised the recorder, but the deck nearly burned through my palm. I staggered forward, one step too close. The gate of sound widened, an impossible mouth tearing open in the underground. The term hit me again, signals become doors, and standing there, I understood this was not metaphor. A door had already opened. Something waited on the far side. I sleep at last. Not gently. Sleep drags me. My body gone slack, but my head burning, as if pulled under the surface of black water. And then the corridor appears. It feels real from the first step. Dripping concrete stretched without end. The sound of rain falling, but no sky above to supply it. The air stinks of mold and iron. Doors line both walls. Heavy, swollen with water, paint peeling from wood. Every door is closed. Every door locked. Handles cold to the touch. I press one. My shoulder heaves against it. No give. Behind the panel I hear laughter, faint but wrong, slowed down like old tape warble. I move to the next. Sobbing. Shallow repeated. A woman's rhythm looping over itself like scratched vinyl. Farther down another door offers no sound at all. Silence thicker than noise. Silence that bleeds tension into my ear and jaw. The pressure makes me dizzy. The corridor bends though, I don't remember walking an angle. The water shifts under me. Shallow at first, then deep enough to slosh against my shins. My shoes heavy with soaked fabric. I keep going, and then I notice it. The thing hung around my neck. My recorder. Strapped close like a pendant. Its red light burns steady, untouched by water. Hiss pours from inside its body. But not ordinary hiss. My own voice whines back into my ears. Words I spoke months ago into darkness. Confessions I had left on spools, as if no one would hear. Grief muttered late at night. My regrets wrapped into fragments. They play here like memory bent into artifact. I freeze as I realize each door rattling behind me syncs with my voice, as if playback itself shakes the locks. Signals become doors. The phrase repeats in my skull. What has been recorded cannot remain contained. Information opens. It intrudes. The sound changes. Not my voice now. Something else. A new voice that does not echo from doors or reels. This one presses against my skull directly. It is close. It is here. It says a word. Not open. It says, choose. The tape light flares hot enough to burn my chest through cotton. All the doors begin to knock at once. Handles jolt. Wood splinters. The sound of iron bolts straining echoes like thunder. The water rises higher, rushing cold past my knees now. My entire body shakes. Choose. The voice repeats again. Slower. Heavier. A bell toll inside my bones. I stumble to one panel already split with rot, its bottom edge fractured. I push with all I have. The wood groans like a scream. Water pushes from the crack as if the door itself is holding back flood. I reel away. Pulse hammering, lungs raw, the knocking stops. A silence drops, deafening, heavy. The voice fades with it, but the pressure remains. I back away, dripping from head to toe, gasping steady. The water around my body hisses as if it whispers my name. My recorder glares red, molten heat against me, and when I wrench awake, breath tearing, I realize my sheets are soaked. Rainwater cold as stone pools across my bed. Drops hang from my hair, my arms, the floorboards around me. And beneath the lamp, on the desk across the room. My recorder still glows. It began with engineers online. A small thread, hidden deep. They claimed the rain track I leaked held something buried under hiss. Not the beacons I had charted. Something lower. A hum beneath hearing, running too long for silence to hide. Subsonic, they called it the ghost floor. I hunted fragments. Old municipal reports from the 90s, stored on microfilm. Families in river towns complaining of headaches that never left. Mothers filing noise complaints, hearing a tone at night that inspectors swore didn't exist. Men stumbling out of bed from vertigo, swearing the ground shifted sideways while the air stayed still. The foyer scraps showed dozens of files marked earthquake, non-event. Hospitals had logged seizures, faint collapses of schoolchildren mid-class, not tied to quakes, blamed on environmental stress. None of the papers connected it, but on spectrum plots I dragged from scanned weather disks the contour matched. A flat, mean tone scraping the bottom. I pressed replay on my own version. I had recorded rain only a week ago, but through new software, the hum bled out. It glided low and patient, dragging slow beneath the storm like a predator cruising. I leaned into my headphones. The room moved. Not the desk. Not structure. The air inside my chest wobbled as though ribs were strings pulled tight and plucked hard. My stomach lurched. The lights above me dimmed, then surged out. The waveform printed on screen widened until it no longer looked like audio. Rectangular bands stacked inside each other, a door nested inside its own reflection. I blinked fast, the vision swimming. My teeth ached, vibrations deep in the bone. I cut the signal sharp, ripping my cable free. The hum pressed on anyway, unshaken by disconnection. My glass of water freaked with ripples, circles spreading. Under my feet, the floor rippled too, though no earthquake recorded anywhere near the city. I stared at my timestamps. Each spike rode parallel to archived hospital logs, across years, across states. The hum was not random, not atmosphere. Someone or something had been transmitting layered with storms for decades. I remembered waking from the corridor dream. The silence that was not silence. That pressure. This was the same force, but constant. Maybe those corridors weren't dreams at all. Maybe they were structures carved by tones into memory itself. Signals become doors, the phrase said. Doors become rooms. Rooms become prisons. I felt nausea wrap my throat. The red light of my recorder blinked on where it had no power. It switched itself alive. I heard it whisper as though to bait me closer. I edged a hand toward the mic. My ears filled with glass shiver, like a crystal goblet rung loud. The walls pulsed outward. Then came the realization gripping like cold steel. It wasn't the floor moving. The ground stayed fixed, firm. It was the air itself, stretching, bending open. I met them in a warehouse on the edge of the city. Bare bulbs swayed above, their lights sinking across sheet metal and concrete. They had been expecting me. No greeting, no handshake. Just a glance that weighed heavy before they pointed toward their setup. Machines hummed low in cages of wire, the kind you find in labs that lost funding long ago. They said they had been running rain signal experiments for months. Said they wanted to prove what the agency denied, that voices weren't buried in recordings accidentally. They were built, constructed from the residue of memory. I leaned close to one device. A speaker crackled faint. Then my mother's voice slipped out. Clear. Strong. Not whispered. Not cut. Not a misfired tape. A sentence lifted straight from the past, from words she had spoken only to me. And she has been dead for years. My throat shut down. I stepped back hard against the wall. They told me it wasn't a copy. The signal didn't work like that. It doesn't duplicate. It rebuilds from scraps, piecing the fragments it finds in static, patching them into something whole. They said signals don't just carry. They hunt, they sift, they reconstruct. I whispered no. My voice cracked. I wanted to believe it was just archived footage, somewhere stolen. But the words she spoke were private, only ever heard inside our house, spoken once during grief. No recording existed for the signal to pull from. Yet here it was, alive, real. The machine spat static again, and the voice shifted. The speaker groaned a low interference hum, climbing sharp until distortion smeared into shape. My name burst out. carved in the tone of someone else, someone half mimicking, thin and awful. Spoken slow, then twice more. My heart locked. No one in the room but me and the researcher. Yet the device called me. The researcher panicked, eyes wide. They slammed their palm against the rig, smashing switches. The voice refused to die. My name looped again and again, cutting across the hiss. Louder, more urgent. Their other hand grabbed a crowbar. With a single strike, they cracked the housing. Sparks danced, the coil popped. The voice didn't end. It continued 5 long minutes after the machine fell silent. Nothing powered. Wires smoking on the floor. And still that warped thing calling me again and again. My stomach twisted until I had to double over. When it stopped, silence wrapped the space, but did not soothe. The air felt hung open, like a cut held wide. I wiped my face with trembling hands, unable to clear the sound from inside my skull. It wasn't in the wires. It wasn't in the speaker. The researcher whispered what neither of us wanted to say. The signal doesn't need equipment anymore. The new tracks arrive one by one, disguised as ordinary uploads. Files marked rain sounds, sleep loops, 10-hour storms. But buried under their hiss, something new hides. I sit at my desk with headphones pressing tight and turn the dial slow. Beneath the crackle, faint and metallic, a single chime. 5 tones. Clear, spaced apart like bells rung down an empty street. I replay 3 times. They never change. 5 precise rings before the rainfall resumes. When I cross-check with message boards, my stomach knots. Posts pile up from people describing vanishings. Not illusions, not accidents. Neighbors who stood in the night rain, then gone the next minute. Families sitting down at dinner, only to realize one chair was suddenly empty. Online streams cut mid-sentence. A host laughing, then blur and silence, the seat behind flickering into absence. The watchers thought it was edited performance. I knew better. The tones were markers. Warnings stitched inside the static. Each set of 5 preceded disappearance. I scoured old tapes I had collected from the archive basement. Hiss heavy and warped. I filtered them for ghost resonance. The chimes revealed themselves one after another. Every major incident already, matched by the pattern. Floods, crashes, collapses, and some that were never reported in public. My insiders note confirmed it. A buried phrase whispered through their voice recorder: weather mortality. Death blamed on storms. Statistics sealed under bland names. Entire vanishings buried inside technical jargon. I closed my notebook, shaking. I had thought the signal only mimicked, that it borrowed voices and built doors from echoes. But this was different. This was permission. The chimes opened pathways. Whoever heard them stood closer to the edge. The sound erased them. I watched the clock slide toward dawn and put on fresh tape. Held the mic at the window. The world was too still, no storm in forecast. Yet the headphones caught rainfall anyway, soft as lullaby. I listened harder. My hands clenched. One solitary chime folded into the hiss. Clear, soft, like a single note struck from metal. It struck once. And then the tape hissed long and hollow, waiting for the next. The streets were flooded again, though no clouds hid the moon. Water lapped at storefronts and phone poles, despite forecasts showing nothing overhead. The air was calm, the sky clear. Yet ankle-deep currents pushed down the avenue, carrying scraps of leaf and paper like offerings. I waded through with my recorder in hand. Every ripple returned as sound. The water wasn't quiet. It whispered. Not like voices caught in metal pipes, not like wind. Actual whispers layered thin. Each step stirred another. They rose together until I realized the patterns matched older reels. Rain tape fragments replayed inside the liquid itself. I crouched low, mic brushing the surface. My ears caught words that weren't meant to be public. Snips from confessions I thought I had destroyed. Scraps of my own grief spat back at me. Recording recycled into element. Every step forward became intrusion. Each splash broadcasting hidden aches into night air. A car passed slow, tires cutting tide. Its headlights fogged across the dark water. Inside, 4 figures sat rigid. Not dripping, not moving. Their mouths worked, but the glass sealed their words. Expressions lifted wrong, as if practiced. Static hiss fluttered from their exhaust with every tremor of the engine. The car rolled out of sight, vanishing into black. I checked the recorder meter. It surged higher with every step until it peeled sharp, like a Geiger counter struck alive. The water was charged with memory more than element. My heart climbed. Wasn't rain anymore. This was playback. The whole town caught in one long audio loop. Replay replacing reality. Around me the water deepened at impossible pace. One street lamp to the next, shin rising to knee to thigh. In each direction, windows hung open like mouths feeding static breath to the flood. An electrical sign buzzed out, then shrieked a ripple through the current. For seconds, the whispers grew louder than my own thoughts. I spun circles within the flow, panicked, shouting names without choosing them. Echo came back not as echo but clear response. Voices stuck inside liquid replied full. People I knew. People gone. Their lines circling me, arguing across time as if the water were an archive spooling infinite tapes all at once. I ran for higher ground, panicking, my coat heavy with soaking burden. Keys slipped from my pocket into the stream. The whispers swallowed them fast. I stopped short as the surface began to smooth. Ripples pulled straight. The current aligned itself not wild, but pushing deliberate. A tide drawing back its curtain. I realized then it wasn't heading toward the river. It was heading toward the old station. The flood sang louder in chorus. My legs caught against a new wave. Behind me, I turned only once. Faces of neighbors, blank and silent, sinking into water without struggle. Their outlines dissolved into static foam. Their whispers carried on even after lungs should have drowned. I stumbled forward, fighting current with every breath. Each step dragged by living memories surging past my skin, and then the flood roared, lined the reels along my desk until the surface bent under weight. Old cassettes, cracked plastics, all hissed stacked against each other. I wanted pattern, proof beyond hallucination. My insider had said corridors weren't just metaphor, they might be real, mapped into the very spectrum. I replayed the tapes one after the other, letting the hiss roll down the line. When I slowed the speed, something strange emerged. Every noise began to overlap, lacing itself forward with unnatural order. The staircase of sound folded into place like bricks. Breathless, I printed each segment as spectrogram. I pinned them on my wall. When arranged alphabetically by case number, the flickers formed chambers. Rectangles stitched against rectangles, perfect as architecture. They weren't accidents of weather compressors. They were designs, audio carved into blueprint. The room spun, but I couldn't stop. I taped the prints in long rows. Soon my walls were covered in patterns like floor plans. Door frames connected from one sheet to another until my own room became a crude model of hallways. Lines wrapping around me. I thought of the dream. The corridor dripping. The locked doors. I'd walked this place before. Not as metaphor, as blueprint. The hiss on my recorder shifted higher. Scales trembled, a shimmer rolling across static. Then something deeper surfaced. Not my voice. Not strangers. A crowd murmured low and steady, echo chamber depths folding back on themselves. The words came slurred but harmonic. I leaned closer. The phrase at last became clear. You built this. My lungs seized. I whispered no. The reels roared louder, tape reels straining. The chorus sang back one layer higher. You built this. It hit me that we all had. Hours of background rain pulled for calm, nights spent with white noise on loop. Every download, every tape, every user feeding the shape. We were building corridors with our own demand for silence. Connections slashed through me like lightning. Institutional silence wasn't protection. It was participation. Each agency file scrub it of warning. Each FOIA page blank as walls. They weren't hiding something foreign. They were helping build something domestic. Still, denial faltered when final words of my insider replayed. Echo chambers are not illusion. They are vaults to contain memory. Sound doesn't just reflect space, it breeds it. From my walls, the prints began to hum. Paper trembling where it hung. The lines vibrated until air rattled. I staggered back. My ear throbbed a steady pulse. The hallway I saw in dreams stretched there now from the far wall. Lightless, wet-smelling, dripping through wallpaper seams onto my floor. My throat closed. Shadows deepened. Doors lined themselves inside the bloom. Then the signal cut my recorder mid-spool. But the hum grew louder without it. And as the paper trembled and spilled from pins, I realized the audio had made structure real. And the chamber was opening. I wanted to starve it. I thought maybe if I cut sound out completely, it would die. I sealed the room. Foam panels pressed tight to walls. Plugs in my ears. Decks muted, cables yanked. For the first time in weeks I sat in true silence. But even that wasn't escape. The silence grew its own voice. At first it was faint, a whisper running through my veins like blood. Then stronger. A subtle hiss emerging from nowhere. My chest thumped as I realized the signal didn't need microphones anymore. It curled inside the absence itself. Dead air wasn't dead. It was pregnant. The longer I held the silence, the thicker it grew. Until it wasn't hiss anymore, but a woman sobbing. Faint at first, like memory pressed through cloth, then nearer. Breath short, raw. The sound swelled until it pressed me against my chair. I ripped the earplugs out. The sobbing filled the room, clearer without any source. My head spun. The microphone on my desk wasn't plugged into anything, but its red light burned suddenly bright. I staggered close, hand trembling above it. My skin swore I could feel breath pushing out from the grill. Like the mic itself was human lungs. The sobbing grew until it drowned my pulse. The red light pulsed in sync, a heart dragging from someone who wasn't here. I screamed to break it, clawing cords, tearing devices from sockets. Sparks jumped, but the sobbing didn't die. It lifted louder, turning into a shriek through the sealed silence. My window rattled wild. Blankets over glass fluttering, though air inside stood still. I tore one aside. An image ripped flesh from reason. Outside, across the street, every neighbor stood unmoving. Rows of them, heads tilted upward, mouths open, drinking drops that weren't there. Rain that wasn't falling. They raised empty palms, tongues stretched wide for water that didn't exist. I crushed the blinds shut, stomach hollow. I fell against the wall under the pulsing sob, body trembling. The sensation hit me sharp. Silence itself was now a channel. Even emptiness bent open for intrusion. All my tapes, all my walls, all my archives no longer contained it. The absence instead fed it, gave it ground to breed. I pressed both hands to my ears hard, whispering my sister's name for comfort. The whisper cracked, failing me. And then the sobs snapped silent. The room dropped flat. For a second, I thought I had crushed it down. But slowly, in the dead air of my sealed cell, the hum began again. It wasn't sobbing anymore. It was words, repeated, slow. Low enough to crack bone. Open. I couldn't stand the mirrors anymore. Last night I caught my reflection lagging. A second too late, lips moving slower than mine. Behind it, rain wept down glass where no water touched it. I smashed the largest mirror with a chair. The frame split, shards scattering across the floor, but the glass didn't shatter clean. Each shard caught a different image, not of me, not of the room. My breath fogged as I bent over them. In one, a blurry corridor stretched long into darkness. Doors lining both sides, rusted and damp. Another shard opened into a view of water, inching along a hallway floor, rippling in time with my heart. My knees pressed tight against tiles, yet what I saw in broken glass was not here. Each fragment was doorway, knocking rose faint from inside the slivers. Metallic, distant, echoing. 3 knocks, a pause, 3 again, like code repeating in white space. I staggered up, covering the shards with cardboard. It didn't stop the sound. I thought shutting blinds might help. I hung blankets over every window, sealing daylight out. Still, when I checked my phone for time, the black screen washed faint silver with rain stripes. Not glare or dust. Raindrops beating in low resolution, sliding downward pixel by pixel. My jaw numbed. The reflection even spread into glass I hadn't thought about. Picture frames, the oven door, fragments on the floor. Each one pooling rain behind it, the knocking grew louder where glass collected. It moved closer, the beat rattling thin like fists against iron doors. It matched perfectly with sound recorded in my tapes from weeks ago, the corridor dream. Doors shaking as if something pressed to break through. I pressed my palms against my eyes, whispering it couldn't be real, couldn't extend out. But reflections had already become weak points, frames eaten thin. Sound migrating to sight. The wave no longer tied to microphones. I flinched as one shard quivered, rain stripes bending from within the sliver. Deep light opening across it, the recorder clicked on, battery long dead. Red light hissed through my shirt pocket. My ears filled with a split-tone screech. The spectrum warbled into bloom, thick light distortions painted across my vision. For a second I saw my room split wide, as though doors stacked one against another. Each pane of glass a lock. Each knock a key turning inward. If mirrors become doors, then I am surrounded. My body fell rigid. My phone lit with 100 missed calls, all blank numbers, all ringing at once. The knocking swelled, trailing through every shard scattered in my room until they rattled against the floor like teeth. And then sharp. One knock came from the window across the room. From the other side of the glass dot, it happened at 2 in the morning. My deck powered on without touch, reels spinning steady as if someone pressed play while I slept. A light spread through the room, soft but demanding, pulling me upright from my chair. The tape rolled rough, full of scratches, then opened with laughter. I froze hearing it. My siblings' laugh. Not faint, not distorted, full, sharp enough to pierce years of silence. For a moment, I forgot to breathe. Time broke open, and I was small again, sitting cross-legged at the foot of their bed. Then my friend's voice cut through, another name long gone from this world, laughing the way I had heard before an accident that ended everything. The spool looped fragments, little lives I had carried alone. Memories resurrected like they were recordings filed somewhere else. I wanted to believe this was miracle. I wanted to sink into it. But it collapsed too fast. The laughter clipped short, chopped mid-breath. One by one, the voices strangled into hiss. Then the hiss grew wet, guttural static pouring into the room like drowning. My ears screamed. My hands clamped against my head. It didn't stop. I leaned closer to the spectrogram on my screen. The noise wasn't random. Patterns cut inside every block. Shapes skeletal, etched as diagrams. Human outlines carved into static scatter. Their faces warped wide into absence. Then came words, collapsing of all others, one at a time. Grief weaponized into intrusion. "Do you remember?" The hiss asked. "Do you remember?" It repeated until I felt each syllable throb like a nail hammered through my skull. I reached for the deck to kill the line, but it struck me back with a pulse. A violent push of air, like a speaker cone slamming into ribcage. My stomach lurched, my spine burned. The room filled with raw pressure. It ended brutal, vaporized in a snap. The static cut. The reels stopped. My ears rang hollow through the silence that bled after. For a breath I thought it was done. I pulled back, trembling, but then the machine stuttered awake again with one last whisper. It wasn't them anymore. It was me. My own voice poured from the tape, but not in any order I remembered. It formed a phrase I never said in front of any device, never spoke aloud in this world. The voice carried me perfectly, my tone etched exact, whispering into darkness. Help me open. I staggered backward, throat raw, hands shaking. I knew instantly it wasn't playback of what I had been. It was prophecy for what I might become. And across the deck, the reels spun faster, as if someone else had just pressed record. Days passed in a blur. My inbox stayed silent. Calls unreturned. I thought maybe my insider had cut ties for good, until an encrypted file arrived in the dead hour between night and morning. The subject line was blank. No sender. Just a file named only with the date. I opened it expecting text, but it was audio. White noise at first, raw hiss like a bad broadcast. But as I pushed deeper into spectrum, layers appeared. Thin notches. Low valleys where voice tried to hide. I adjusted filters one by one, dragging static back like cloth torn away. That's when I heard them, their voice stammering between bursts of distortion. Broken syllables. Familiar tone bent wrong, like a tape crumpled and stretched. I leaned forward, pulse slamming with both relief and dread. They said my name inside the hiss. Then a flat sentence. I couldn't close it. The words dissolved into static. The file looped itself back, slamming to start. Each time I listened, it stopped at the same breaking point. Always just before the end, never allowing a clean release. They were stuck inside it, echoing like a prisoner pacing a cell. My stomach hollowed. They had gone too close. The signal had them now. Another voice added faint under the loop, one not theirs, one made of residual hiss condensed sharp. It whispered once, a word that felt colder than any command before. Not open, not choose, it said, join. The deck popped hot beneath my palm. I yanked fingers away, and still the tape counter advanced even though no reel spun. My blood iced. I tried to shut it, but the hiss held constant, as if the recording wasn't contained anymore. My speakers became lungs. My walls bled with pressure. The entire room vibrated like a breath drawn in. The file replayed, my insider's last line collapsing harder, syllables eroding until only murmur remained. Each pass through the loop sounded less human. I knew what it meant. Silence had consumed them. Silence now fed itself through me. And in the final loop, their voice broke one last time, but the tone was not warning anymore. It was invitation. Sleep didn't come gently. It dragged me under. No drifting. No fade. One blink and I was inside again, water climbing my body. The corridor stretched endless ahead, doors warped by damp, hinges groaning with each breath of the space. This time the hall was half submerged. Cold flooded past my waist, pulling hard. The surface reflected fractured lights, bending with each ripple. The ceiling buzzed faint like power hidden behind stone. I could taste metal on the air. The doors sagged into liquid, paint blistered and peeling off in strips that floated past. I pressed my hand against one. Wood bowed under pressure but stayed locked. From behind it came faint voices, conversations from other years. My friend's warning laugh. My sibling muttering something too private to repeat. Not memory, playback. The corridor was a spool, and I was caught in its reel. I forced myself forward. The water dragged harder each step until the weight nearly toppled me. My recorder bobbed against my chest, its red light steady, cutting through dark like a pulse. The glow sharpened the waves. The screen flickered warped words I'd never seen. Choice. Behind me, bells began to ring. Not loud, soft at first, but clear enough to carry through water and bone. 5 tones, patient as death. I turned, but there was no source. The sound simply existed, folded across walls. Ahead, the corridor widened. A single door hung cracked at its center, already broken down, frame splintered. Water rushed through that gap with hunger, as if poured into another chamber. My body shook, teeth chattering. This wasn't dream, this was instruction. I pressed deeper, hand trembling against the fractured edge. I shoved hard. Rust shrieked, the broken frame gave, and I staggered inside. A new room waited. Its walls rose high, covered top to bottom in cassette reels stacked like tiles. Spools spun in unison, though no deck ran them. Plastic snapped and cracked as reels shed strips of tape that rained down like black water. They fell across my shoulders, wrapped against my legs, sliding heavy like chains. Voices spilled from every reel at once. Thousands. Screams stacked atop whispers. Sobs guttural, laughter cracked. Each voice mine. Every word I'd spoken into tape since the beginning. Hours of my breath collapsed into chorus. I screamed for it to stop, but the sound wove thicker with my own cry. Folding it back, replaying it louder, layering it into structure. My scream locked into the room forever, even as my lungs emptied. Then silence. The reels froze all at once, and the rain of tape ended. The chamber held its breath. Knocking began. Not one door, not one wall, knocking from every side at once. Radios burned alive all at once. Every band, every dial. Phones erupted in trembling static, screens buzzing with cracks of light that bent around numbers. The whole city hummed like it was one enormous shell held at my ear. I stepped outside, and the sky was still clear. No storm, no clouds. Yet rain fell anyway, constant, merciless. Droplets sharp as needles, stitching the streets into one spreading ocean. Hospitals had already abandoned their wards. Reports trickled across hidden boards before every network drowned. People lay in their beds, untouched for days. Eyes half open, lips moving with words no nurse could recognize. Some bodies twitched, some lay still. All breathing. None waking. Families locked outside glass doors, while doctors whispered codes into headsets that could never reach broadcast. The hum had grown into atmosphere itself. Like oxygen. Every hollow carried it. My neighbor slipped in front of me as I walked. Their mouth moved, repeating syllables I could not hear. Their body dissolved into mist before they reached the corner. I didn't even stop. I couldn't risk stopping anymore. I drove straight south, toward the river. Toward the station. My chest felt like it was splitting down the center with pressure. The recorder on my lap glared red, brighter than it had ever been. Hot to the touch. The signal inside no longer hissed thin lines. It screamed steady. A word flattened into eternity, open, drawn out, until it ceased being speech and became weather. Roads lost their edges as water poured across them. The tires cut like knives through dark mirrors. Shapes glowed faint ahead of me in each pool. Faces bending, doors forming. By midnight, I reached the gate. Or what was left. Chains dangled loose, no lock. The flood had dragged the fence down flat. I walked through what was left of entrance stairs, shoes cracking against mud and soaking memory. Inside, where once there had been only mildew, now light swelled. A wall of gray spectrum rose like storm clouds condensed into surface, alive with shifting lines that surged and folded. The noise here was complete. A waterfall made of hiss, a roar of static flooding my body with sound I could taste. Each pulse lashed the air into angle. The bloom inside the spectrum carved itself wider. It wasn't random. It was geometry, perfect. Rectangles of snow that built into threshold. A door. I lifted the recorder thinking I could capture it. It burned almost through my palm. I cried out, but the scream only fed harder, spiraling into the wall until my own voice repeated there, one layer among thousands. Every sound I had made was waiting in this place, pinned into its frame. The corridor formed beyond. Doors in long succession, groaning, bolts dragging free. Locks shuddered and gave in. An entire building of sound stripped its locks open at once. Metal screamed. A chamber exhaled. The glow brightened and I saw water crawl upward into the air, droplets hanging like beads, held by the tone alone. The door ahead yawned, widening, walls bending into black dot. The hum cracked higher and higher, a pitch beyond measure that split vision into shards. My skull shook as though death was a gap too narrow to squeeze through, but the words still roared, carried by every voice, mine among them. One long stretched command, tunneling into eternity. Open. I screamed back and stepped forward.